In March 2020, the United States began implementing statewide shutdowns in order to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses and schools shut down as people tried their best to stay in their homes. Video conferencing companies like Zoom skyrocketed in value as businesses and schools scrambled to make remote work and remote learning a viable option for the uncertain future ahead. As the weeks went on and shutdown regulations were relaxed, even though there was no end to the pandemic in sight, people were still being extremely cautious about when they chose to go out and where. As the world slowly started to reopen, whether it was smart to do so or not, certain businesses struggled a lot more than others. Cinemas were one of the hardest sells in those early days. Sure, everyone needed to go to the grocery store and be in close contact with people, so you would mask up, run in and get what you need, or get curbside, and get out. But a movie theater? That meant hours sitting in close proximity with others in a dark theater where you couldn't even see if everyone remained masked the entire time. It's no surprise that theaters went months without a big reopening. The situation with cinemas got so dire that AMC Theaters actually took action against Universal Studios. When Universal Studios released their 2020 movie Trolls World Tour directly to video on demand, AMC said they would stop showing all Universal Picture movies and threatened to do the same to any other studio that followed Universal's path. See, historically, cinemas and movie studios work on a sort of handshake deal known as the theatrical release window. A big budget movie will release in theaters and be exclusive to theaters for a certain amount of time before anyone at home can see it. It's been generally accepted that a movie is in theaters and then a few months after it's left theaters, it'll get released to home video. The pandemic was the biggest threat to that model that cinemas had ever seen. With no clear date on when it may be safe to reopen, and past that, when the average consumer would feel comfortable going to the theaters en masse again, movie studios were eager to continue getting money for all the films they were sitting on whose releases had been delayed by the COVID shutdowns. Deals were struck, compromises were made, huge filmmakers left their home studios to start making films for their competitors because they disagreed with the theatrical versus home release strategy that they decided on. It was a wild time, and I bring this all up because I want to talk about how Disney handled this situation. Disney's live-action Mulan was set to release in March of 2020 and was delayed when the COVID shutdown occurred. It was pushed to July, then to August, and then ultimately had its theatrical release canceled and was sent straight to Disney+. But not to all members who currently paid for a Disney Plus subscription, no. Mulan was released to Disney Plus on September 2020 as a Premier Access film, which meant you not only had to subscribe to Disney Plus to access the movie, you then had to pay an additional $30 to view this specific film. This was Disney's answer to not having a theatrical release. They would get their money directly from a special fee on Disney Plus. While many scoffed at the idea and vocalized their intent to not purchase the film, it was reported that nearly 30% of all Disney subscribers purchased this Premier Access. That was around 9 million subscribers, and at $30 each, that comes out to about $260 million for Mulan. A massive success, if accurate. Disney would experiment with this method for 4 subsequent movies: Marvel's Black Widow, Cruella, Jungle Cruise, and their following animated film, Raya and the Last Dragon. On the Pixar side of things, we also saw Disney Plus releases that avoided theaters altogether. The movies Soul, Luca, and Turning Red were all released to Disney Plus without Premier Access, free to all subscribers, and without any semblance of a theatrical release. This is notable because by the time Turning Red came out in 2022, theaters had been reopened for quite some time. Only a few months beforehand, in December of 2021, Spider-Man No Way Home actually crossed $1 billion at the box office, becoming the first COVID movie to break that barrier. Even after that and several other successes in theaters, Disney chose to keep releasing the Pixar films on streaming, foregoing theaters entirely. This is important because by the time 2021 is ending and 2022 comes around, Disney had taught audiences that going to the theater was no longer important for their movies. These movies that used to be holiday events and bring in millions of dollars were now something that could be watched opening weekend on repeat for families immediately upon release. Instead of paying for 4 movie tickets and concessions and traveling to the theater to see Encanto, families could just turn the TV on and watch it. Then watch it again. And again. And the next day, after the kids had been singing about Bruno nonstop, they could watch it again. So after that experience, what happens when Disney tries to go back to theatrical exclusives for their animated movies? A massive flop. Again, why go to the theaters? And people were rushed to argue that this movie flopped because it just wasn't very good and nobody wanted to see it. But let's back up a couple of months. Encanto, one of Disney's most celebrated movies in years, a movie that seemed like it was everywhere in late 2021, with one of the biggest Disney songs of all time, the first to hit number one on the Billboard Top 100 chart since A Whole New World. That movie? Also a box office flop. It was in theaters exclusively for 30 days before being sent to Disney+. Pre-pandemic, the yearly Disney movie was easily clearing $200 million. And now, they are struggling to make even half of that. So I don't think the quality of the films tells the whole story at all, and the result of this fiasco that Disney put themselves into is incredibly sad because currently their release slate for the next couple of years is now really only sequels to some of their more popular movies that they deem as safe. We have Moana 2 coming up this month. We've had Zootopia 2 and Frozen 3 confirmed. We have more live action movies like Moana again and Lilo and Stitch. The movie that started correcting Disney and Pixar's box office curse was Inside Out 2, a sequel to a beloved Pixar original. And to add to that sequel list, we have Toy Story 5 coming out in 2026. I'm not saying I hate sequels or that I didn't love Inside Out 2 or anything like that. All I'm saying is that when backed into a corner because of a worldwide pandemic, Disney made decisions that put themselves into a corner and led to the box office failure of nearly all of their animated releases since 2020. And it's looking like the result of these decisions and failures is going to be a doubling down of the sequel live-action reboot hell we've been living in for the past decade. So with all that context, I'd now like to talk about Disney's biggest financial flop of the pandemic, the biggest box office bomb of any animated movie ever. Let's talk about Strange World. Strange World was Disney's 2022 Thanksgiving release and covers the story of 3 generations of the Clade family as they struggle to reconcile their ideological differences as a family in a strange world. Strange World is a science fiction film heavily inspired by older pulp magazines, adventure films, and movies of the time like the works of Jules Verne, Treasure Island, and Jurassic Park. Strange World released to good but not amazing reviews, and as I mentioned, absolutely crashed at the box office. The film grossed only $38 million domestically at the box office, and it is estimated that Disney lost anywhere from $100 to $200 million on Strange World, making it Disney's biggest flop financially, finally surpassing Treasure Planet for that honor. And the thing is, I also didn't see it when it came out. On top of Disney shooting themselves in the foot by training audiences to just wait for the Disney Plus release, I feel like Disney really didn't market this movie at all. When I saw it listed in theaters, I remember having no idea what it was. I don't think I had ever seen a single trailer for this. So, when I sat down to finally watch this movie, I was going in pretty blind, and based on reactions that I had heard, I was ready to be very disappointed or underwhelmed. But I wasn't. Okay, the movie is not a catastrophe like I was fearing. There's actually so much I really enjoyed here. Let's break it down. Visually, the movie is mostly a delight. I find everything in the Strange World to be gorgeous and animated well. Splat is a fantastic nonverbal character, the environments are vast and beautiful, and the creature designs range from dazzling to absolute eldritch nightmares. Seriously, these tentacle spider monsters will haunt some kids' dreams for sure. That being said, the human characters' designs I don't particularly care for. The movie opens with this astounding visual style that mimics the pulp magazines that inspired the movie, and it was a delight to watch. Plus, it was paired with a really catchy theme song for the Clades that introduced us to father and son, Jaeger and Searcher. This scene had me so excited, and then 2 minutes later, we wiped straight to the actual animation style, and I was a little let down. They're not bad, just not that interesting compared to the rest of the movie. The ideas and setup are also parts I very much enjoy. Jaeger and Searcher as father and son present an immediately recognizable but fun dynamic. And fun bit of trivia, these two are voiced by Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal, reprising their role as father and son from another incredible movie. And it presents a nice groundwork for Searcher and his son Ethan to have a believably positive, yet not fully realized relationship. Dad, I don't want to follow in your footsteps is not a groundbreaking story trope, but it stuck around for a reason, and it really resonated with me here. The film shines in several moments when it lets these characters lay out their differences and exist in extended peaceful scenes where their silence in this vast unknown land says as much as any of their words do. Two scenes in particular, one between Yeager and Searcher, and the other between Searcher and Ethan, convey so much in their silence, and I think they are truly the highlights of the film. Ah yes, and one more thing. Hi, I'm gay. If that sentence made you immediately want to turn off the video, then you're probably the same type of person who would leave comments like this. In which case, you're probably not going to like any of the content that I make. If it didn't bother you, then good, let's continue. Having lived through countless Disney is announcing their first openly gay character, only to be met time and time again with the rug pulled out from under us, left me very skeptical to the reports that we'd have one yet again in this film. I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that this time it wasn't all smoke and mirrors. Ethan Clade is in fact our first openly gay protagonist, and it is the sweetest thing about this movie. We get a scene where he feels awkward in front of his crush, Diazo. His father playfully grills Diazo about Ethan, embarrassing him in the process. And when Ethan tells his long-lost grandfather about his crush on a boy, Yeager doesn't even skip a beat and merely tries to tell Ethan how to best impress Diazo when they get back to their home. It's so sweet and innocuous, but so powerful in its representation. If you never have to grow up without seeing yourself on screen in any movie or TV show, I really don't know how to break it down simpler than saying representation is important. I wish I had had this movie when I was growing up. It could have saved me from a lot of pain and confusion and self-hatred and isolation and just a lot of rough feelings and emotions growing up. And what did it cost? A boy saying he has a crush on another boy. By the end of the movie, we never even see them kiss. A far cry from most princesses and princes I saw growing up. Hell, I saw lions have a lot more intimacy than this. There is absolutely zero sexual content happening here, and comments decrying this movie for sexualizing children or calling the fact that a gay person exists is woke and boycotting the movie for that blows my mind. No, this movie did not go woke, go broke. There were so many reasons why this movie bombed, and it was not Disney having a gay character. I don't like giving false credit when corporations try to pander representation around, but this time around, I tip my hat to Disney. I thought this was incredibly sweet and very, very real, very nice representation. So with all that said...
Now, Leah, you like this ad. Tell us why.
I actually didn't.
This movie frustrated me so much. There's so much here to build on. So many interesting characters and ideas that could pay off massively, and it feels like the writers just did not have enough time to cook. I mentioned that I loved the slow scenes between the fathers and sons, and I did. But surrounding those scenes are some of the most rushed, sloppiest edits and storytelling I've ever seen in a Disney film. We jump so quickly from scene to scene that the characters hardly have time to breathe. This might have worked better if the movie were drawn more in that original comic book style like its opening, and it felt like we were jumping from panel to panel of a comic book, but because it abandoned that style, the movie feels caught in between this slow, personal story it wants to tell, and all these set pieces and revelations it wants to cram into its runtime. This leaves the movie feeling both like it has way too much story to tell to cram into its runtime, but also like the plot is somehow so rushed and surface level. So it's time to get into some spoiler territories. The plot of Strange World is that during an expedition, Searcher Clade discovers an interesting plant that generates energy. He wants to take this plant back to their homeland to improve the lives of their people, while his father Yeager is unimpressed by the plant and wants to continue journeying on incessantly, never satisfied with any discovery, but rather longing for the journey instead. 25 years later, Searcher is a farmer with a family, and they all work on harvesting this plant, now called Pando. There is a call to action then when a member of the old expedition team comes knocking on Searcher's door and informs him that something is causing Pando to die off, and they need to go investigate what is killing the crop and stop it. Searcher reluctantly goes off with her, his son Ethan stows away, and his wife follows behind chasing after the runaway son. They are then immediately attacked by some creatures, where a member of the crew gets murdered, by the way. This is never brought up again. He gets murdered and pulled right out of the plane. And they crash land on an unknown world underneath theirs, getting separated during the crash. Searcher finds his long-lost father down here, having been trapped and surviving in this world for 25 years, and Ethan breaks off from the crew to go searching for his father. The bulk of this movie is these members trying to fix their airship, find each other, and navigate this world. Okay, that's all the context you need. Let's go back to that beautiful scene I mentioned earlier between Ethan and his dad. We have our big father-son fight here where Ethan says the line,
"I know I don't want to be you!"
And we have that beautiful, quiet, and serene floating scene where the two sit with each other's words and try to find some harmony together. As soon as this scene ends, we get the major reveal of the movie. The landmass shifts and reveals a gigantic eyeball staring directly at the father and son. So up until now, a lot of Ethan's hesitation with his family has been that his father is a farmer who wants to kill pests and weeds because they destroy his crops, and his grandfather is a hunter whose first instinct is to flamethrower these creatures because he senses danger. Ethan wants to be neither of these things and tries to explain his philosophy to his father and grandfather through a Settlers of Catan style game he and his friends are into, where he claims the point is,
For the 27th time, there are no bad guys. The objective isn't to kill or destroy monsters. You're just supposed to build a working civilization utilizing the environment around you.
So we've already got the setup of Ethan being an empathetic character who is not okay with all the violence and damage the gang seems to be doing to this world. Even with that context, what happens next is absolutely wild. Ethan immediately deduces that an eye being present means that this thing must have a head. Therefore, because it has a head, it must have a body. And therefore, that is what they have actually been traveling through. Not a landmass, not an environment, but an actual living thing. Okay, I can live with that conclusion. He then deduces that the monsters attacking them are not actually monsters, but are actually an immune system of this creature trying to fight back. Okay. He then deduces, well, Pando is actually killing the creature. They rush back to tell the crew, whereupon we get a fast betrayal from our crew's captain, who locks them up because they're talking about destroying the Pando now, when the whole purpose of this journey was to save it, because that is what their civilization relies upon for living. They immediately escape and take over the ship, rush to the heart of the living being, and state that if they can make a hole in the Pando roots covering the heart, then the immune system monsters can rush in and take Pando out from within. Jaeger and Searcher create a hole together, the monsters rush in, and after a brief fake out where it seems like our characters were too late, the creature comes back to life, our captain is pleased to learn that she was wrong, and we get a quick epilogue where we see all is well now that Pando is gone. Even though it was the backbone of their civilization and what powered their cities, we get a line of, "It's inspiring to see how resilient people can be." All of that happens in the last 15 minutes of the movie. All of that slow build up and beautiful slower scenes just for the movie to rush past all this conflict and revelations so quickly so that they don't have to address any of the details. And it's such a shame because all this stuff that we're rushing through is easily the most interesting part of the movie for me. We have set up that Jaeger is a hunter, Searcher is a farmer, and Ethan is on the road to being an environmentalist. These are a trio of really good different ideologies. We have also set up that their civilization relies on the discovery of Pando for power, lights, radio, their flying machines. Essentially, their entire technological revolution has been based off of Pando. The reveal of the eye and that they are actually living on the back of this creature is interesting. And let's just accept for a second that not only does Ethan recognize it's a whole creature, but also that Pando is killing it. Let's accept that for a bit. The revelation that this discovery that the entire society relies on for their everyday life is actually killing an innocent creature is very interesting. That right there provides an interesting dilemma for our characters to have to deal with. Now, I'm not saying that the movie isn't right. The Pando does need to be destroyed. They have painted Ethan in the right this entire movie, and I'm not denying that he would rush straight forward into this conclusion and say the Pando must be destroyed, this living creature must be saved. That makes sense. But Ethan is not the only voice in this movie, and we pay very little to no lip service to the other massive parties involved here. Captain Callisto turns on the Clades and locks them up without even listening to what Ethan and Searcher have to say about what they discovered. If they were to tell her the entire situation, she'd have to come up with a response, an ideological difference on why she wants to continue to save Pando, because it powers their life. But having that discussion would paint her as too much of a villain, and we're not really going for a twist villain, we just need a little bit of an obstacle. So, they don't have that scene, they don't explain it, Callisto just locks them up because we're here to save Pando, that's all there is to it. We don't actually address the dilemma of why saving Pando is important, to save the living creature, and what damage it'll do. It'll ruin civilization up there. We get none of that. She turns on them, locks them up, and then is immediately silent for almost the rest of the film. She hardly has a line of dialogue. When they take over the ship because they immediately escaped, she tries to break into the brig, tries to get control back of the ship for one line, but then we reach the heart, she is shocked, and she doesn't say a word really for the rest of the film. We never get her side of the argument. Searcher, the discoverer of Pando, the person whose entire legacy is based on this discovery, does get one line where he screams to his father that he is willing to throw his legacy away for his son, for what his son wants, which is something that Yeager has provenly never done before. And he does get that lip service, so I'll give them that, but it's still one line that he gets, and it is purely personal. It is not about society at large. It's just about Searcher's legacy. We never once get any kind of insight from the people up above or even through any of their representatives here on the crew. Because Callisto gets silenced for the rest of the film, we never get a single person asking, wait, what about our way of life? Destroying Pando will essentially send us back to the Stone Age, as it is clearly their means of electricity. These questions never pop up. Doctor Who has an episode I love in Season 5 called The Beast Below, where we have a very similar setup to Strange World. We have this large city traveling through space, and it is revealed that it is only kept alive because it has latched itself onto a massive creature called a star whale, and it is actively and consistently torturing the creature in order to keep it moving and generating power. The conflict of this episode arises when we discover that this is something that every single adult in this society knows about. Once every 5 years, they come together to step into a voting booth. They are told the exact circumstances of how they are surviving and what the cost is to continue surviving, and they are given a choice. Wipe their memories of what they just learned and continue living, or vote to free the creature and leave the society on its own accord. If just 1% of the population votes to free the creature, it will be freed. This society has chosen to forget for over 200 years and kept the creature in captivity and tortured it before the Doctor arrives and confronts this issue. Now, I'm not saying that this Doctor Who episode is one of the greatest of all times, or even that its hypothetical question is handled subtly or with great care. But it does use a very incredibly similar situation to Strange World and demonstrates one of the most exciting parts about sci-fi as a genre. What would humanity do if presented with this situation? How do you approach bringing it to the people? What's the fallout of the decision? The Strange World could have still ended the exact same way it does, with the decision to destroy the Pando and free the creature, but by rushing through that last 20 minutes, we are skipping over the most interesting part of the setup that Strange World has presented us with. With that one line of, "It's inspiring to see how resilient people can be," we never get to see any backlash or consequence that this effect has had on society. Society never even gets a say in the situation at hand. I understand that this movie is ultimately about the bonds between these 3 generations of men, and that was the focus of the story. But I truly feel like this was just a huge missed opportunity and a big part of why I left this movie feeling disappointed and pretty let down. I like the 3 main clades, and I like the individual moments that each character gets, but there was just so much more potential here with the story that they had that was never realized. It also completely wastes the character of Callisto, the head of this expedition to save the Pando. Now, she offered up a really great opportunity to be the dissenting voice of the people and fight for Pando's existence for the good of society, but she doesn't get that opportunity. The movie has her turn twist villain for like 5 minutes, locks the Clades up without hearing what they have to say or understanding the argument. She blindly moves forward because it's her mission and not because of any intellectual stance that she's taken, and in the climax of the movie remains nearly silent for the remainder of the film. Now, this is a shame for 2 reasons. One is because she is the perfect vessel for this counter-argument that I've been hoping for in the movie. She is here to save the Pando. She is a resident of Avalonia, the civilization up above, and she is the perfect person to say, no, I think it's worth it to keep torturing and possibly killing this creature because this is how we live. We need this. She'd be in the wrong, and it would make her more villainous, could still be redeemed, but it would still be an interesting take on a character, and she is perfectly set up as the person who it would make sense would deliver this argument. And number two is Lucy Liu is giving a really good performance here. Like, she is doing even a character voice. I didn't recognize it as Lucy Liu, and I'm kind of loving her performance here. And Callisto's design is pretty great. She's super strong. She gets really badass moments just like Jaeger does, where she's fighting off these creatures all on her own and saves Searcher and Ethan multiple times. Callisto's a great character, and I would have loved to have seen her developed more and used more, but she isn't. This decision to silence her deprives us of both of these two things, and at the end of the movie, I think it's a shame because one of only two main female characters in the movie gets her role almost completely stripped away for the finale. With all of that being said, the ending isn't completely void of anything good. Like here, after the climax where Searcher decides to do something nice for his dad and finally take him to see the other side of the mountain, his father's lifelong quest, when we get there, we see everyone staring at the magnificent eye of this creature, except for Jaeger and Searcher. They are both turned away because it no longer matters what the discovery is. All that matters is their reunion and their repaired relationship. Is it subtle? Absolutely not. But is it sweet? Absolutely. I love these parts of the movie. But with the rest of it being filled with this fantastical, strange world with so many interesting questions asked, I can't help but feel a little cheated on how quickly we're supposed to just believe that the twist and the conclusion happen. It's all wrapped up so neatly and so quickly that it barely has any time to leave any real impact. The movie that this most reminds me of in the Disney canon is actually Atlantis: The Lost Empire. That was another Disney movie that had lots of similar elements that all worked on their own. The visuals, the characters, the spectacle, but the story wasn't able to bring it all together in a fully satisfying way. I'm curious to see if Strange World will experience a similar cult status a decade from now like Atlantis has currently. With the way this movie bombed, I don't see Disney lining up to make a sequel or a live-action remake to this anytime soon. So I think this is the last time we're going to see the Clades, which is a shame. I personally would have loved to see a Disney Plus cartoon or anything, especially in that pulpy comic book style from the beginning. Maybe either showing another adventure they go on, or a prequel series showing the adventures of Jaeger and Searcher as Searcher was growing up. I would have loved to have seen that and seen what they did with these characters and this world, but I don't think we're going to be getting that anytime soon. So did this movie fail because it was an absolute disaster? Definitely not. While no masterpiece, it is far from the worst Disney movie, and had the company not shot themselves in the foot with their release strategy during the pandemic, this movie, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Encanto would have made so much more money at the box office. It looks like Disney is correcting course though, with Inside Out 2 breaking so many box office records this year, and Moana 2 in theaters right now. It's definitely looking like Disney's going to hit its box office stride again. Keep in mind that I don't really care how much money Disney makes at the box office, but it's important if you want them to keep making original content. If movies like Strange World and Raya and the Last Dragon keep bombing, then in Disney's eyes, that's only going to lead them to make Frozen 4 and a live-action Tarzan next. And they're going to continue milking their existing franchises for all they're worth, and that's just a shame. I want more movies like Strange World, and ultimately, that's what this movie has left me with. I love these movies so much more than the sequels and the live-action remakes. Movies where Disney might completely stumble and miss the mark, but shows that they're willing to swing and take the leap and risk and try something new. This is the Disney that I love and want to see. And with the movies that have been released the past couple of years, hi Mango, with these movies that were released these past couple of years, even the successful ones like Encanto, I'm just afraid that we're getting further and further away from that reality and that dream. And all I have to look forward to is Moana 2 right now, then a Moana live-action remake the very next year. And I kind of hate that. All right, thanks for going on that journey with me. I know there was a bit of a long ride there with Strange World, and after everything I said, I don't think it's going to come as any surprise that on my current ranking, Strange World does come in at the very bottom. It is not better than any of the Disney movies I've seen so far for this project. Let me know where it ranks for you if you've already seen it. If you haven't, I do recommend watching it. It's not the greatest thing Disney has made, but I had a really good time. There were a lot of parts that I love, and there's a lot of strong things in this movie that I think anyone will find some enjoyment out of. So just go in with an open mind, and I think you'll have a good time. Let me know what you thought about it. If you've liked everything I've had to say and want to hear more, remember, we're watching all of the Disney and Pixar movies, so that's our main project. I like to make a little bit of side videos here and there, but we will be going through every single Disney movie. So if you want to see that, subscribe to this channel, like and comment so more people can see the video, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Also, Jaeger Clade was lost in that strange world for 25 years. 25 years surviving in the wilderness completely alone. And when we find him, he's a little surprised to see Searcher, but that's really it. It's almost as if nothing has changed, no time has passed. He's acting the exact same way he was as we left them. And, you know, in a movie where we're talking about a lot of plot threads just being dropped and not addressed, that's a weird one, isn't it? 25 years and no change in this person. I don't know. Weird. Also, if I had a nickel for every Disney movie to involve generational family drama between a son and his long-estranged father, where the father wants to be a free spirit and not tied down to a single place, and the son doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, and it all culminates on an island in the middle of the ocean that is actually revealed to be a gargantuan turtle, I'd have 2 nickels. Insert that Phineas and Ferb joke here.